Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast for a new video here on the channel. I'm excited. I'm happy we were able to get this one out. We've got UFC 324 full card betting guide here, giving my thoughts, my opinions on each matchup here on this stacked UFC card. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here, if you want to see this series continue, I'd like to do the same for PFL this year if we get time. Hopefully we can grind it out. Hit that like and subscribe button, and let's dive right into the action in the early prelims. All right, man, diving straight in here for the first prelim. We've got Ty Miller and Adam Fugit. Usually with UFC debutantes, when they're coming in off the Contender Series, making their way into the UFC, it's very important to decide whether you think they're going to be the next up-and-coming guy who you have a lot of faith in that you're really going to ride until they find that first loss inside the UFC, or whether you want to fade them instantly. And with Ty Miller, I have my question marks. I'm definitely reluctant here. Decent boxer, but one of the things that really has me kind of concerned for him is he said on Contender Series that he'll work hard once he's taken down. I have a big question mark there about whether Adam Fugit can really implement wrestling in this fight, which is why I am picking Ty Miller. I think this fight is going to go a little bit longer. We're going to see out of the first round. We tend to see with UFC debutantes that they come in, they tend to be, a little bit nervous. They tend to not necessarily have their best foot forward, especially early in round one. And I do think that Ty Miller here is going to take a little bit to get settled into the UFC. Adam Fugit is no slouch. I know his record doesn't necessarily show at the age, the fact that he can be a little bit chinny. But I do think we see a second round here. I think that we're going to see Adam Fugit kind of, minding his P's and Q's, maybe mixing in a little bit of wrestling. And realistically, Ty Miller just kind of having a little bit of UFC jitters here for around minus 333. 333 here as a favorite to start round two. I also like Ty Miller as the sort of mediocre pick here, that traffic light system that I like to use. You've seen it in other videos on the channel as a confidence level sort of pick. I'm sort of on the fence with Ty Miller. Don't shove him in your big parlays. Don't put him in your the one that you're going to put the most money on this week. I like him in a couple of parlays. I like him at minus 450, a little bit chalky for my price tag. If you want to get that price tag down, you could definitely get him at KO or decision, the double method there. That'll probably bring the price tag down a little bit. Maybe even throw in there for a same game parlay fight to start round two. We've seen with Adam Fugit that he can be a little bit hittable at times. He can be chinny. He tends to back up on a straight line, and I think that Miller's boxing can definitely capitalize on Adam Fugit here. I just see this fight being a case of, Miller's just going to take a little bit to get warmed up and get his feet wet inside the UFC. That's why for the kind of the long shot, the one with the better odds here, we're going with Miller second round KO TKO at plus 400. I just want to clarify here. Obviously, lines are subject to change. Do your line shopping. It can vary from book to book. And also as well, this is just my thoughts. This is just my opinions. This is not every single player I have on the board. This is not all of my bets. This is just my opinion about each and every fight here before all of you haters and trolls in the comments sit here and say, oh, but you lost at plus 400. I never said I was betting it. It's just my opinion on the fight. If you want some action or if you like that side, it gives you my opinion to back up yours and do your own research, of course. Tomorrow there'll be my best bets, the ones that I'll be playing on the board as well. Just wanted to clarify that. I like Ty Miller. Just don't go crazy with him, especially in your bigger bets this week. And next up, obviously still on the prelims, we've got Ricky Turcios and Cameron Smotherman, and I want absolutely nothing to do with this fight, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think fight goes the distance is probably the safest bet. We've seen with Ricky Turcios, very, very durable, unless he's getting submitted on the ground by a better grappler. Tends to stall out in fights, good cardio. On the ground, he's looking to take you down, a lot of clinching, which to me spells fight goes the distance. And when you see with Cameron Smotherman, tends to have low output, hasn't necessarily put his best foot forward so far in the UFC. Both guys still reasonably young, especially Smotherman. I just can't get behind the favorite price tag here with Smotherman. It's going to be dog or pass here if I was going to bet it. Obviously here, I think the fight goes longer is a nice parlay piece. I think the over 1.5 might be something that's very, very chalky if you want to put in like a heavy chalk parlay. I could see it going long in this one. But Ricky Turcios moneyline is probably the only way that I could look in terms of playing this. I do not want to touch Smotherman as a favorite at all. But like I said, I'm going to be nowhere near this fight altogether. And I said on the full card breakdown as well, I think Ricky Turcios by split decision here is sitting at around plus 1,100. I think it smells greasy split decision where Smotherman kind of has the first round. You see Ricky Tercios kind of give up rounds early, especially with guys that have power. And as the fight goes on, his cardio tends to be there and Smotherman tends to have low output. So I definitely think there's a world where Ricky wins rounds 2 and 3, or, he wins the fight late, Smotherman wins the fight early, and we kind of see a greasy split decision here. At these odds, especially at split decision price tag at that plus 1,100, I think it's definitely viable. I definitely think it's something we could sprinkle here. I'm not going to be touching it, but just my thoughts, just my opinions. Like I said, I want nothing to do with this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if either guy won this fight. I just think it goes the distance. And next up, still on the prelims, we've got Anthony Hernandez here taking on the ever UFC veteran here in Michael Johnson. Still surprised he's around at 39 years old, but Anthony Hernandez looks good, man. He's looked good in his last 4 fights, a guy that a lot of people weren't that high on, especially in his lower weight class, but he's looked good since moving up. His cardio's looked better. He's been getting the finishes, and Michael Johnson's also made a resurgence here. I know a lot of people are quite high on Michael Johnson this week as an underdog. The only reason I'm more high on Hernandez is just purely because I don't trust Johnson's chin. Him having one breakout performance against Daniel Zellhuber doesn't necessarily make me filled with confidence at this price tag. You'd have to give me, plus 200, plus 250 for me to consider Johnson. I need 2-1 odds here for me to really sort of take the older UFC veteran here. He is still fast. He is still viable in the boxing, but I think Hernandez just is a better athlete. I think he can mix in some wrestling as well. That's why I've got here fight starts round 2. I don't think Johnson's going to get knocked out early. I think he's going to be cautious. He's going to be fighting his way in and out of the pocket. I think Hernandez is going to take a minute to kind of get his timing down. I know it's very chalky again. Fight to start round 2 feels pretty safe to me. I think we could be seeing either a late finish here from either guy or the fight goes to the judges' scorecards. And that's why for my middle pick here, or for my medium confidence, I like Hernandez. I think Hernandez is going to get this one done. This is a fight to me that if he is kind of on that up-and-coming 4-fight win streak like he has been, I think this is a fight he should win. With obviously Hernandez's skill set, he can mix in the wrestling. I would like to see him do that just to kind of maybe slow down the hand speed and slow down the athleticism here of Johnson. And obviously he's been on a tear of knockouts, so that's why I've got here as the sort of the plus money price tag here at the end with the lesser confidence is Alex Hernandez inside the distance. He has been finishing people, obviously in his previous fight, his Hooper fight as well, where he was able to get that knockout. He might be able to find the submission here if he mixes in the grappling, but I do think his best bet here is countering with Johnson, coming into the pocket and really just landing maybe a crashing elbow or a stiff right hand as Johnson comes in, and just look to counter. We know with Johnson, he wants to be able to stand there on the feet with you and trade. I do think the best path to victory here would really just be waiting for Johnson to come to him and landing that counter shot. Obviously not quite 2-1 odds. Obviously if you take the under 2.5 and Hernandez inside the distance, that'll probably get you to plus 200. I like that play for 2-1 odds here, but the safer play, probably one I'm going to put in some of the other parlays this week, is Anthony Hernandez. I do think that he gets it done here, and I do like the price tag here, especially with his up-and-coming sort of resurgence here in the UFC at this weight class. And next up, we've got the big boys. We've got Josh Harkett taking on Denzel Freeman. And to me, I like Harkett, man. I think he should be able to get this one done. With Freeman here, 34 years old is not necessarily old for a heavyweight. However, he didn't look that great to me in his UFC debut. You've got a guy in Harkett who came in early in round 1. He's got the hand speed. He's got the boxing. Hasn't necessarily got the cardio, or at least we've seen at this point, because he's been finishing everybody in round 1. So we have to assume, heavyweights, but when it goes long with heavyweights, sometimes it get a little bit sloppy. But Josh Harkett is a guy who he is fighting at that sort of 230 to 240 mark in the heavyweight division. So I do like the fact that he is a little bit undersized for heavyweight. He's got that speed advantage. I think that he can find the chin here. If you want to play it safe, I like Harkett moneyline. I think that this is kind of the one that you can tail, or you can tail and throw in with some, over fight starts round 2, some chalky plays here, lesser confident plays. Because obviously Harkett is a guy who is still very raw inside the UFC, so is Denzel Freeman. It's kind of hard to get a gauge of where their skill set's at. You've got Freeman here who came in his UFC debut and he didn't wrestle, but he had pedigrees for wrestling chops that he didn't necessarily use. But his striking didn't necessarily look that good either. So I think if he stands and trades with Hockett, he might get knocked out here. I do think if he mixes in the grappling, it could be, a greasy sort of back and forth heavyweight sloppy fight. It's going to come down to the cardio. I do like Hockett, though. I do think that he is the much faster guy, and I think he's got the cleaner boxing as well. That's why I'm going to take him here. Hockett inside the distance might be a nice play for our best bets for a prop. And also Hockett round one at plus 625. He is a finisher. He is a guy that comes out aggressive early, very measured. And I do think that he can find the chin of Freeman. I do think that Freeman's got some decent Muay Thai, but I do think he leaves his chin up in the air, and I think Hockett can definitely take advantage here. More of a play on the number at plus 625. I like Hockett money line more, and I do think that he finds inside the distances. That's usually his path to victory inside the heavyweight division here. We'll see how his UFC run goes, but I like the guys that come in at heavyweight that aren't, ballooned up 265ers that have to cut weight to get to 265. He looks sort of lean, mean, and I think he can definitely come out here and find the knockout. And next up, this one, man, this one's tricky. I think when you've got a guy in Charles Johnson, obviously taking on Alex Perez, both guys are very, very skilled, and it just depends on which guy shows up on the day. I think realistically, you look at both guys' resumes. Perez is a guy that's been fighting the who's who in the division, and then all of a sudden he'll fight a guy that's not necessarily a well-known entity inside the UFC, and he'll have a decent performance. You think he's back, and then all of a sudden he'll fight a named opponent again that everybody recognizes, and he'll get finished or he'll lose. But Charles Johnson, a guy who, not necessarily known for his punching power, all of a sudden he'll knock out Joshua Van, the current champion, knock out, Logan Kavanagh as well. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. And then he'll kind of have stinkers and, kind of let the betting public down when they're all confident on him. So that's why I'm leaning to Perez. I did sort of say in my full card breakdown, this is probably one of my least confident picks because it just depends on which two guys show up on the day. I think fight to go the distance, or at least to go probably past maybe even round two here. I think we might see the third round. This fight goes late. But I do think there is going to be a stoppage. I think it's just going to be late, which is why I've got the plus price tag here for fight doesn't go the distance. We've seen with both guys that Johnson, he tends to get later into fights. If he is going to get a stoppage, it's going to be second and third round. It's not necessarily going to be early. And I think with Perez, it's the same way. He comes out very aggressive at times, but he is getting his reads. I think he might struggle with the range here of Johnson with the 3-inch height advantage that Johnson does possess, along with the 4.5 reach advantage. But I just see this fight being, kind of back and forth and depending upon which fighter shows up on the day, which is why I don't really want to touch this one too much. But I've got here fight ends by KO, TKO, or DQ sitting at, for either fighter, sitting at around plus 325. If you can get that on your sports books, I think that, 3-1 odds is definitely a way to play it. I think either way, it's probably going to be one guy knocking the other guy out late. If it does end up going to the judges' scorecards, I'd be kind of surprised. Perez has been a guy that's been finished in multiple fights now. Johnson's been on a tear of knocking people out. And also as well, I think if Perez does decide to mix in some grappling, we saw him take down Asu Umabayev. You never know where that could lead, especially with the scrambles. He is live for a finish as well. He is a born finisher, so he could definitely finish Johnson late in the fight also. So I don't necessarily love these plays. Definitely not one that I'm going to be playing this week. But as I say, if you're interested in the fight, if you have an opinion, that's my opinion. Go with your gut on this one. If you like it, I'm going to be staying away this week. And next up, dog of the week, baby. We've got Nikita Krylov taking on Modestas Bukauskas. And I like Krylov this week. I think he's going to be able to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses. I just see this fight playing out very much a case of, if Krylov loses, he's going to be overzealous. He's going to be doing what he did in his last two fights. He's going to get finished. And if Krylov wins, he usually finds a way to get that finish. He's a guy that's very credentialed in Kyokushin karate. On the feet, he's got good kicks. Very nice boxing as well. He can definitely time combinations. And Modestas Bukauskas is a guy that's been on a tear in terms of finishes as well. Training with Tom Aspinall, a guy that's definitely very bulky, very heavy for the division, and definitely can put your lights out with those little check hooks. So I've got the under 2.5 rounds here, sitting at around minus 400. Not always a fan of the fight doesn't go the distance sort of props, but I do think this one is going to be a finish on either side. So that's definitely a safe play here. And like I said, Nikita Krylov, dog of the week, my favorite betting underdog on the entire card. I think he gets it done this week, sitting at around plus 120. I do think that with Krylov, he's got to come in measured. I will leave a link in the description for why I have him as the dog of the week. More of a full in-depth breakdown, full highlight reel tape there for Nikita Krylov. Check that one out if you're more interested in why he's my favorite underdog. And also as well, I've got him here as the juicy price tag here at Krylov by submission. And that's the reason being, as I explained in my breakdown, I could see Modestas Bukauskas here shooting in a sloppy takedown, and Krylov is a guy who I believe he won the Pan Am, I believe it was a Ukrainian jiu-jitsu tournament. He is a guy who is very, very skilled on the ground. He has a lot of submission victories, very underrated grappler, and I do think that the price tag here is definitely got some value in it, especially for Modestas Bukauskas, who is a guy that on the feet, he leaves openings, along with the fact that on the ground, sometimes, he will leave openings. And even if Krylov is on the bottom, I could see him throwing up a triangle. I could see him throwing up an armbar here. And if Krylov decides, hey, what better way to get back in the win column here by mixing in the grappling? I've been knocked out twice. I've been overzealous. How about I come into this fight, smart game plan, get this fight to the ground, get into a dominant position and look for a submission and use my grappling here at plus 500. I think that's a steal. I think this fight, this line should be closer to 350 or 300. I think there's value there at 5-1. I like Nikita Krylov this week. Definitely somebody I'm going to be betting, and we'll talk about him in the best bets. Check out the dog of the week. Full highlight reel tape there as well. And next up, we've got Atemba Gutier, and a very short breakdown here. I think this is going to be Gutier all day by finish. The price tag makes sense to me, the minus 825. I mean, to be honest with you, Pulev hasn't done anything to me to warrant him being a viable pick here, a bet, a sprinkle, nothing. I think it's going to be Gutier early. That's why I like the under 1.5 here. Pulev's got tall man defense. Atemba is a guy who is very, very measured. He's got power in the hands, very athletic, will defend takedowns. And I think realistically, it's just going to be a matter of, if and when in the first round that he's going to be able to, basically get the knockout. I just don't see a way that Pulev's going to be able to survive here. I think he's going to probably go to the body and come upstairs. And realistically, it's going to be first round Atemba Gutier, which is what you can see on your screen. Very chalky. I understand it's hard to really find value in a minus 825. I just think it's one of these ones where, maybe you get Atemba, double method here, KO or decision. You throw him in a parlay, a chalky parlay, and call it quits. If you want to action on the individual fight, I like Atemba Gutier here, first round knockout. I think that even money price tag is warranted. The under 1.5, I think, is a safe parlay piece to maybe throw in with like Josh Hockett or something else. But no way I'm touching Pulev this week. Moving on, really. And next up, pretty much rinse and repeat here. We've got Umar Nurmagomedov, Davidson Figueiredo. And to me, this line, I said this in the full card breakdown, is absolutely crazy. There is no way he should be minus 1,425. I think he wins. I think the wrestling's going to be too much for Davidson Figueiredo, especially at 39. We've seen him get taken down by Sandhagen. But I just don't think that, for a former champion that's got all these skills, in a sport as kind of crazy as the UFC and MMA is, for one punch, one takedown with a guillotine, and all of a sudden a plus 870 is cashing for you, especially at this price tag. Do not throw him in parlays. Do not touch him here. The only way that I'd see this fight is fight to start round 2. I think there's going to be a heavy sort of wrestling attack here from Umar. Get the fight to the ground. Hopefully Figueiredo can survive here and cash for a start round 2 prop. I think Figueiredo can definitely make the fight longer. He's going to need to if he's going to have any chance here. Obviously, the second play with a little bit more value is Umar by submission. I think that's viable. I do think that he can definitely wear on Davidson Figueiredo here, getting the takedowns early, wear on the gas tank, and ultimately find a finish late in the second or third by the submission. He needs a statement performance after losing to Merab Dvalishvili. And obviously coming off of that Batista fight as well. He needs that kind of, getting back into the finishes, getting back into the win column kind of vibe in order to get a title shot here. And I think, a statement win here via submission over Davidson Figueiredo is definitely viable. Almost 2-1 odds. Unfortunately, obviously the line is not where I want it to be. And hey, if you like Figueiredo, man, if you want to take him and you don't necessarily think that he's going to win, but he makes it to the judges' scorecards, maybe Umar gets tired from the heavy wrestling approach. Maybe Figueiredo can win the third round. You see it that way. The juice is there, plus 3.5. I wasn't able to find the line in terms of what the price tag would be for Figueiredo plus 3.5 on the spread. If you just need him just basically to win one round, I think that could be definitely something to look at if you like that side. I'm not touching it, not putting Umar in any parlays, probably not even going to touch this fight altogether. Moving on. And next up, we've got Arnold Allen taking on Gene Silver. And there's a few viable elements here in this fight, especially I think Arnold Allen's being overlooked a little bit, if I'm being honest here. And there's definitely a little hedge that you could probably do in this fight that we'll talk about as well. I did pick Gene Silver, but I'm not super confident. I do think this fight's going to go longer. I think Gene Silver's a guy that, he tends to play with his food a little bit. And I think that Arnold Allen could definitely come in after a layoff. He's going to be the bigger, stronger guy. Talked about putting on a lot of muscle since his layoff from his shoulder injury. He could come in and wrestle here and kind of drag this one into deep waters late in the fight. And he's, a viable striker. He's going to walk you down. Silver likes to counter, which has me a little bit worried that he might kind of counter and knock Allen out. But I do think that Allen is a guy that's going to make it to the judges' scorecards, which is why, I think all he needs to do here is win one round. The over 1.5 to me is a great sort of little parlay piece. I think Gene Silver is a guy that, like I said, plays with his food. He's probably going to get the finish if he does in the sort of late second round. It can go into the deeper waters with Allen's wrestling. And obviously here with the medium sort of level play, I think Arnold Allen, like I said, is being overlooked. We could get him here at plus 3.5 on the spread at plus 130. I think that's a good way to go. He comes in, mixes in the wrestling maybe in rounds 1 and 2. Silver kind of takes over late. He wins the decision overall, which is why we've got Silver by decision at plus 200. But the way I see the fight playing out is that Silver is a guy that kind of leaves it, to the judges sometimes. He'll knock the lower level guys out, but when he comes to these higher level guys, I do think sometimes the antics can kind of get him, in trouble. And I think that here with Arnold Allen, I think he's going to come in very serious, very focused, 20-3, bearing in mind the guy's only lost to absolute studs inside the UFC. We've seen chinks in the armor of Silver, and I think the way that you could play this fight if you wanted to is Silver by decision or hedge it with Arnold Allen moneyline. That's giving you plus 200 either way. As long as Arnold Allen makes it to the judges' scorecards or doesn't get the finish himself, or even if he gets the finish, he's going to be the plus 200 on the moneyline. So the way I see it, as long as it gets to the judges' scorecards, you've got plus 200 either way there. I think that's a good hedge to be able to get 2-1 odds either way. And the way that I see this fight playing out is I do think Silver's going to win with the striking. I think the layoff might be a hindrance here for Allen, but ultimately I do think that he's being overlooked here as a guy that I think a lot of people had down as a future title challenger, or at least a guy that could, challenge for the belt. And I think that there's definitely a path here where he wins at least one round against Silver. The Fighting Nerds haven't necessarily been all that. We'll see how 2026 holds up for them. But like I said, I think there's definitely money to be made here on Allen if we attack it in the right way. And we've got Rose Namajunas taking on Natalia Silver. And this one, to me, again, it's kind of a pass, really. The line's too wide. Women's MMA can be tricky at times. You've got the former champion in Rose at plus 280. Wouldn't touch it. I think Natalia Silver's the next up-and-coming, sitting at around minus 360. Wouldn't necessarily want to touch this fight. Maybe throw in a chalky parlay with, Hawkett and a couple of other guys, Ty Miller. That's where I'd kind of leave this one. Obviously, Silver by decision is probably how I think this fight goes. Fight to go the distance, I think, is also very, very safe. And here, I didn't really have anything when I'm looking at some of the odds. We don't have to bet every fight. We don't have to necessarily have a play on every fight. I didn't really see a whole lot of value here. I don't even think Rose wins a round, if I'm being honest with you. I think Natalia Silver is far too elusive. She's a woman that's basically going to come into fights and be able to dance around, pick and prod, and she can seal rounds with takedowns. So not my favorite play, not one of the ones I'm going to be betting. Might touch the over in this fight, or maybe throw Natalia Silver into a chalky sort of non-confident favorite parlay, but that's pretty much all I'm going to do with this one this week. I'd encourage you guys to do the same. And we got the big boys, man. I like this one. I think this one's definitely going to... I think I've got a good read on this one. And what I will say, and I always say this about Derek Lewis fights, is we're going to dive right into the plus money play. I tell everyone this when we talk about Derek Lewis is Derek Lewis by knockout at plus 350 or 3-1 odds is always live. If someone says to me, I've got a Derek Lewis ticket for knockout and it's sitting at around plus 300 or more, it's always live. I'm never going to talk someone off that cliff. I'm never going to talk somebody out of betting Derek Lewis by knockout. He's leads the UFC in knockouts for a reason. It's always a viable option. I do think Waldo Cortez Acosta is going to win the fight. I think the fight does not go the distance, is very safe. Lewis is going to win by knockout. Waldo Cortez Acosta is either going to knock Derek Lewis out. He's not going to mix in the grappling. It is an option. I don't think he does it. I think Salsa Boys boxing is going to be enough. I think that he's very elusive on the feet. He's much better than people assume with that boxing pedigree. He's going to jab, poke, prod Derek Lewis, and then ultimately find that right hand, which he's been doing in multiple fights now, getting the finishes. Got Waldo by knockout at even money. I like that play there at minus 110. I do think this fight is one of those ones where, if you want to take a risk on Derek Lewis, you want to play Waldo, and you also want to play the Derek Lewis prop. I can understand that as a hedge. However, I do think the fight is going to end in a knockout. I would say probably second round for Waldo. I think he can chew up Derek Lewis's calves as well. And I think the longer this fight goes, the more it suits Waldo. But Lewis is basically going to come out and blitz Waldo Cortez Acosta. Otherwise, I think it's just not going to play out in his favor. He's going to get his calf chewed up. He's going to get jabbed to the face multiple times. And I think Waldo Cortez Acosta has proven that he can elude the power. He survived with Sergey Pavlovich, and I think that he's going to do a good job of being able to kind of evade the big shots of Lewis. He's going to be swinging at air, while Costa's going to be the much more technical boxer. I like him money line as well if you don't necessarily want to play inside the distance. If you just want to take Waldo by just money line, I like that in a play for a parlay this week for sure. If you want to take him by KO or decision just to get that prop down, or get that money line down, I should say, I also like that as well. KO or decision for the double method. I think that's definitely a viable option this week as well. And we got the co-main event, the newly formed co-main event. Very disappointed in Kayla Harrison and Nunes being taken off the cards, but it's always a good fight when you're watching Sugar Sean O'Malley taking on Song Yadong here. Great fight. I think we're getting O'Malley at a good price here, which is why we're going to be playing him here money line as our more confident play. I do think O'Malley's going to be able to get this one done. I think Song Yadong is very viable, very tough, very durable. He's going to look to mix in grappling with that team alpha male style, and that team is going to come in, I think, looking to exploit the wrestling like obviously you see with Merab, obviously taking Sean O'Malley down. I think they're going to try to rinse and repeat that, mixing in takedowns, mixing in the boxing. But I think O'Malley's far too elusive. This is a fight that he should win. I do think O'Malley is a guy that needs to make a statement here to kind of get his confidence back, get a finish. But Song Yadong is very tough, very durable. And I think this fight plays out a little bit more in Sean's favor, more than the Petr Yan fight did. I think that he's going to be able to touch Song whenever he wants to on the feet. I think he's going to be able to time knees up the middle as Song tries to go in for takedowns along with uppercuts. And I think he just styles on him. I think it's going to be a very unanimous decision here for O'Malley, sitting at around plus 100. I'd like a little bit more juice on that one if I'm being honest, which is why I'm only going to play Sean O'Malley money line. If you want to go KO or decision, I think that's probably a better price tag. It's sitting at around minus 185, I think. I like that play there for O'Malley. I think he's going to get it done. Not necessarily super confident, but I'd say 8 out of 10. I think O'Malley gets it done being far too elusive. And hey, if you're done with the O'Malley train, if you're a guy who is sitting there going, I do not trust this guy after, he's kind of had his aura rocked by Merab Dvalishvili. If you're not confident in him and you like Song, I think he makes it to the judges' scorecards. Then Song Yadong by decision sitting at around plus 300. I'm going to go with the O'Malley train. I'm not done with him yet. I think Merab is an absolute tank. I think he comes in here and makes a statement and kind of reminds everybody who he is. But if you're on the Song Yadong train, I'd say take him by decision at plus 300. That's probably the way to go. But I think Sugar Sean O'Malley gets it done with the striking. Far too elusive, and capitalizes here this week. And that brings us to the main event. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button for the full card betting guide here. We got Paddy the Baddy Pimlet, man. Looking good. Every single fight from fight to fight, he's improving. Justin, the highlight reel Gagey, 37 years old, taking a lot of damage. You know where I'm going with this. I think Paddy gets it done here, but I like the over 1.5. I think Paddy's style here, he's going to struggle to get takedowns early. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be able to get Justin down, kind of like how Khabib did. I think he's going to, have to sort of play it out, a little bit more patient, very much how the Bobby Green fight took place. Blast kicks from the outside. Justin's going to walk him down a little bit. He's going to have to frustrate, kind of poke and prod, and then time his takedown. So I think we see the fight get out of the first round, kind of late second, third round sort of period. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in this breakdown, but I think this fight gets over 1.5. I think Paddy's grappling is going to have to wear on Justin in order for him to get takedowns, but I do think that Paddy is ultimately going to get the finish. That's around minus 150 for him inside the distance. I do think Paddy is going to be able to get this fight to the ground at some point, and I think he's going to be able to get the submission or with ground and pound. I think he's going to look to do damage once he gets into dominant positions and ultimately find the finish here on Justin the highlight reel Gagey. I do think, however, as the fight plays out, Paddy, second round, third round submission is a very liable bet. I think obviously here at plus 450, you're getting value. I think as the fight plays out and he gets those takedowns and he gets into the dominant positions, he softens Justin Gaethje up with the ground and pound, looks for the choke, and ultimately gets it in the second or third round. If you can get that on your sports books, I like that play. If you just want to take Paddy rounds 2 or 3, I think that's sitting around plus 300. That's also a very viable option. I do like Paddy this week. I think that he's looked good from fight to fight, always improving. Justin's a guy who's taken a lot of damage, 37 years old. He's talking about his last hurrah, his last go around. Not a fan of when guys say that. To me, it's like they're admitting that they're over the hill. He plays a ton of golf outside of this. And I do think that his work with Trevor Whitman is good, but Trevor Whitman, it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? You know, Kamaru Usman, not there anymore. Rose Namajunas, not there anymore. Just in the highlight reel, Gaethje. Maybe we see a similar path there for that Trevor Whitman camp. Once a good camp, now kind of fading away. I think this is the new and up and coming. And I think Paddy knows what's on the line here. He knows that this is his moment. This is his chance at a title. The UFC wants it. That's why he's got this shot. Dana White privilege or not, he's here in this moment, and I think that he's going to capitalize here inside the distance. He looked fantastic against Michael Chandler as well. I think we see another performance here, another statement win here for Paddy, the baddie Pimblett. And that's all we got time for here on the full card breakdown here for the betting guide. Hope that was a help for you guys. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Let me know if you agree with any of my takes or if you disagree. Let me know in the comments section below. And listen, if you like this content, if you want this video to continue, let me know in the comments section below. I'm looking to do this every week. My thoughts, my opinions, and check out my best bets video that's going to be coming out tomorrow of all of my plays that are going to be on the board. If you don't care about all of this and you just want to tail, that video is for you. You can tail my bets next in my next video. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.